of Windows was in no way motivated by something to do with Netscape. We had chosen that was a logical evolution of the Windows feature set before Netscape was a factor at all.
Mr. Gates, if your answer is that it played no role, that is your answer. But I need to get on the record what your answer is. And my question is whether an intent to deprive Netscape of revenue played any role in any of the decisions that Microsoft made with respect to its browser or browsing technology.
We decided that it was a logical improvement of Windows to put the browser into Windows before we had much awareness of there even being a Netscape. So the decision that would be a feature, and as I've said, when we make something a feature of Windows, that means that it's available along with all the other features in the license fee. That decision had been made very early on. We also had a very early recognition of the potential revenue sources from things like the search button and the home page, and that those would become quite substantial. Let's say we decide to put a new feature in. Is that included in what you're asking about?
A new feature in what?
In our internet browser technology.
If the purpose is to deprive Netscape of revenue, if that's why you put it in, yes, it is included, sir. And if you don't understand the question, if my question is not clear, I will rephrase it. You can tell me the answer is yes. You can say the answer is no. You can say the answer is I don't recall. You say your question is so confusing to me I can't answer it. But all I'm trying to do is find out what your answer is.
Well,
do you have the question in mind?
I think it's quite a big question. Let me just give you a hypothetical to understand. Let's say we think users want a feature, and it can be a feature that we're doing first, or it's a feature that Netscape has done first. When we decide to put that feature in, our primary goal is to make Windows more popular and build momentum for Windows. But certainly there is, let's say it's a feature that Netscape's done first. Then we are thinking, okay, will users be interested in our browser? If it's a feature we've done first, we're thinking, will users be interested in our browser? So you can't say that, as you get into 1996, that we're unaware of Netscape, and even though what we're primarily doing is related to making better experiences for customers and all that, the fact that we'll be compared with them in terms of how people choose browsers, we're aware of that.
I didn't mean my question to suggest that you might have been unaware of Netscape in 1996, Mr. Gates. I assume that you were aware of Netscape in 1996. My question is whether an intent to deprive Netscape of revenue played any role in any of the decisions that you made about browsers or browsing technology. I'm not talking about a decision where you say, I understand this will have an effect on Netscape, but I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm talking about a situation in which, at least in part, you take an action with the intended purpose of depriving Netscape of revenue. Did you do that?
Well, the original decision to include the browser into Windows as a feature of Windows was not taken in response to some thinking about Netscape. But once you get out into a period where we're looking at Netscape as one of our competitors, it's very hard to say, did that influence our decisions or not? To me, that's a very vague question. It's one of the facts we are aware of. Our primary goal, of course, is to make Windows better for customers. And we were doing a lot of great stuff there, and we're actually very successful once we got past a certain point in doing a product that people did decide to choose. But how can you say, when every person at Microsoft makes any decision, we don't get to run it where there's no thought about Netscape and there is a thought about Netscape. So you're asking me to reach into people's minds and do something that I think is strange.
Would you read back my question one more time? And again incorporate it. The original one.
And my question is whether an intent to deprive Netscape of revenue played any role in any of the decisions that Microsoft made with respect to its browser browsing technology.
Have you answered that question now to the fullest extent that you can, Mr. Gates? Because if you can, we'll just stop.
I find the question unclear enough that I'm afraid I won't be able to do any better than I already have.
Okay.
We looked at charging as part of the IE3 planning during 1996.
I'm not asking when you looked at charging. I'm asking when did Microsoft first make an estimate or projection of how much money it would receive?
Oh, when we looked at the issue of whether it was a better idea to charge or not as part of the IE3 planning.
And that would have been in 1996. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
You have to say yes or no for that.
Yes. You don't get mm-hmm.
She does, but it doesn't always come out exactly the way you think. And who made that estimate or projection?
Well, I know there was discussion with Pete Higgins and Peter Newport and myself about that, and each of us would have hazarded some view of the value there.
And what was the projection or estimate that you made as to how much money Microsoft would receive from browser advertising, and when?
I don't recall the exact number.
Approximately.
I honestly don't recall the number.
Can you give me any approximation or range at all?
Would have been in this period, Netscape had done a deal to sell their search button traffic, some portion of it, for something like $15 million. And, of course, they had a much higher usage of their browser than we did of ours. And so depending on what you thought our usage would be, you could prorate in and look at what Netscape was getting on their search deals and other deals and do the estimate based on that.
Let me distinguish between two things. One is you're sitting here right now and doing a logical estimate. And the second is whether you remember what your estimate was back in 1996.
I don't remember what the estimate is, but I think I'm being quite helpful to you in telling you facts that went into making that estimate back in 1996, because Netscape had already monetized some portion of their search button traffic.
I appreciate your help, but what I'd like to do, if I could, is approach it my way, because for me it's easier to understand it my way, if I take it question by question. And the first question is, do you now recall anything at all about the estimate that you made back in 1996 as to how much advertising revenue